then what I'm doing is I'm sorting the data set by industry code, which is 4-digit level, company name, and year. So you can sort the data set. Then I don't need the years above 2005 because the trade liberalization really happened till 2004 and 5. So I don't need after that. The tariffs really didn't drop after it kind of got stabilized after 2005, 2006. You can do 2006 as well. It's pretty much the same. But after 2005-6 trade liberalization, the process of trade liberalization got really stagnant. And see, there in prowess, what we have found is there are a lot of accounting errors. GPA is one of them. A lot of cases when we calculated GPA, which is sales minus in the data set you have the GPA. You don't have to. In sales minus raw material cost turns out to be negative, which is an accounting error. We cannot see raw material expenses cannot be greater than sales. Sales is always greater than raw material expenses. The GPA is negative, so you're dropping those because these are accounting error. We don't want those farms in our industry, in our samples. Even if such the case, you should not be, even if you can think of such is the case that sales is greater than raw materials, you don't want such farms in your samples because that gives a counter effect on the results that we actually want to do. That's why I've dropped GPA less than 0. Then I'm saying, so this is basically, I'm saying data that this is a farm year level panel. This is, you can also write it as I farm ID, T is here. That can also be written. So this is the command to say, because data doesn't know. I'm still telling data that this is a panel data set, which varies by farm year. The dimension of the data set is by farm year.
So by then I'm adding 1 when we are not transforming the age. What if the year of incorporation is equal to year?
Equal to the
year.
That's then 0, right?
Yes, then log 0 will be not.
Then you can. Really, you can. It shouldn't be matter. Shouldn't matter now.
Then you miss the initial year of that.
They miss the initial year of that farm. Yeah, that's true. So then, if you can write like this, then you're defining the age, which is the year minus the establishment year of the farm. You have the age. I'm taking the log age and the log age square. It's generally why I'm doing this because the literature suggests there are some non-linearities with the age of the farm. So I just include a quadratic term of the age. Because some farms older behave differently than newer farms. So that's why I'm using a quadratic term to control for the age of the term. These are all farm control variables. Then you can see I am just using, actually for regression, you won't be doing assets and GPA as replacing then the missing values as zeros. Because there has to be a positive value of assets. So I'm directly taking assets, directly taking log of GPA. Whatever the sample is there, the sample is there. You don't worry about who is not there or not there. Okay, but imports you can take, I'm taking 1 because not everybody is an importer. So you want to include imports who is importing and who is not also importing. That's how you have to differentiate. Otherwise, you can't differentiate. If I'm doing log imports, this one, then all the zeros get dropped and I'll be estimating the sample for only the importers. There is no non-importers in the sample. That's why for all the imports, you can see I am doing. So you have all the variables in the data set. This is total imports. This is total imports by the GV of a farm. This is the total imports of stores and spares by GV of a farm. This is imports of finished goods by the GVA. This is imports of capital goods by GVA. This is import of raw materials. This is import of production units. What is production unit? I can write this. Capital and raw materials are basically production units, and non-production units, imports of stores and spares and finished goods, is non-production units. This is technological adoption, which is the sum of R&D expenditure and the foreign technology transfer. Also, I have used this as +1 because not every firm was involved in R&D. And it's similar with exports. Not every firm is involved with exports. So you can write this I can, if you want, I can label the variable and it will be easier for you to understand actually which is what. Sorry. You can see that. So you can see prowess gives us so many different kinds of inputs. Good. So have I loaded this? So let me load and run. All good? All good? Would you run this? It will be useful later. So now I'm defining my assets and the GVA. You can do it either of them because this assets and GVA is basically indicator of farm size. I want to control for farm size in my regression. Higher the assets, higher is the farm size, higher the GVA, higher is the farm size. But these are very much inflated. These are very much inflated. So what I'm doing is I am making them real. So I have WPI deflator. You have it there as well. This is WPI deflator at the industry level, 4-digit industry level. So I'm divided by 100. 100 is actually, I guess, the 2005 or something. And then I'm making it normalized, and then by 2005, and then making it real. You can have either of them, and then I am using input and output tariffs. Output tariffs again are the tariffs on final goods that are being imported in the domestic economy. This varies at NIC, National Industrial Classification 2004, 4-digit level. Do you know how 4-digit, have you seen the industry chart structure? Have you guys seen the industry structure, 2 digit, 3 digit, 4 digit? You have seen the industry structure, right? You know how 2 digit, 4 digit, 3 digit looks like. If you're not, I can show. If you want to see, well, I can show you guys. And input tariffs, I calculated based on output tariffs. Output tariffs are given, and I've calculated input tariffs based on the input coefficients from the IO table of 93, 94, which is given by the MOS. So this is given, this you have to calculate.
Sir, this IO table in 1993. So, like, current IO table is available.
What is the
Current IO table is available.
in the recent one? I don't know recent. I have no idea. 93, 94, 98, 99. There was another one after that.
2002 or 8.
Something like that. But after that, I've never seen
They discontinued.
the discontinued.
Because of this, there is a major changes in disaggregation.
Yeah, disaggregation index, but they never published that. So there is 87 before there is. So you can go back actually, but recent times I wouldn't.
I think there is this world input output table. We can use that.
You have more or less. You can use any other, let's say, developing countries as a standard. That would be actually good in the sense that that will actually qualify for external validity. That will be used others. That is not endogenous there. So you can use it. So input output tariffs, I am logging it. I am also now what I'm doing is I am creating a trend, linear time trend. And I'm interacting this time trend with industry fixed effects at the 4-digit level, because the tariffs vary at the 4-digit level. I cannot use industry or fixed effects at the 4-digit level. That's why I'm carrying a linear time trend. Why I'm doing this? To do an industry time trend, because there are a lot of industrial policies that come out over time to support industries. So all these trends, interaction of the industry fixed effects with time trend, because industry fixed effects are different, right, across each industry. And this would multiply with the time trend or interacted with the time trend, would control for all the time varying, linear time varying policies that has been targeted to that particular industry, which we don't observe. That's why I'm controlling for them, because there are a lot of industrial policies that come up simultaneously, which also affects any outcome of interest. Because what I want to do is, what is the purpose? I want to estimate the effect of trade liberalization, in this case, drop in tariffs, on, to start with productivity, on the productivity, controlling for any other simultaneous policies which are driving those productivity of those firms belonging to the industries. That's the point. And controlling for farm variables as well. When you are guys, so let me run this and then go to the productivity. I am not, I'll just run this. You go ahead writing this. Clear why I am doing trend controlling for industry trend.
Industry increase repeated.
Yes, absolutely. So why I'm using trend here? This is a linear time trend I'm creating from our first of our data set. This is the trend that we are creating year minus every year from 1990 onwards. Okay. Then what I'm doing is I'm interacting industry with trend. Industry means I'm interacting industry fixed effects. This is the code that is given for every industry. This is unique for every industry. And if there is a farm which belongs to each of this NIC 2004 4-digit level. So what I am doing this, because every industry has different industrial departments. I'm pretty much sure you know this. For example, there is Council of Leather Exporters. They look after exporters, promotion policies. They look after to help leather exporters. They look after to help the overall industrial performance of the leather sector. They come up with, time to time, they come up with support programs to help those firms in order to perform better. I don't know these policies. Neither do I can observe these policies. It's impossible to observe these policies because sometimes it is directed to certain firms, sometimes not. So it's very difficult to control what we do because these are unobservables. For this, I'm interacting this industry fixed effects with a linear time trend because these policies vary over time linearly. I'm assuming these policies vary over time linearly. That's why I am using this linear time trend to interact with this industry fixed effects at the 4-digit level. And this kind of policies can come out across any other sector. There could be support programs from the government. There are for the farms, there are textile sector as well. There are other sectors which are comparative advantage, which are labor-intensive sectors. Government comes often with support programs for those industries, for the farms. And I don't observe all this. It's impossible to observe all this. And only a simple time frame wouldn't take care. Only a simple year fixed effects will take care because a year, if I only use year fixed effects, what will happen is I assume then the policy is similar for every industry in that year.
The industry fixation
We would vary by industry. So this is different by 4-digit industry, linearly across the time frames. If I only use a year, it will be then adjust year fixed effects, similar effects that will assume that the effects or the policies are very similar across every 4-digit industry. That's what I'm going to do. I want to vary those policies by industry. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find out the most conservative estimate, not most unconservative estimate. I'm trying to control my regressions as conservatively as possible,
So if we
as tight as possible.
we do industry trend interaction, we don't need that industry.
No, because it's already embedded here.
Either a year
We can have year fixed effects, but not industry fixed effects. Separately year fixed effects, you can, but not industry fixed effects. Now, let's come to the estimation of productivity. We'll start with Levinshon-Petrin. First, what you do is you have log of wages, total wages you have. That's the labor. That's the value of labor that has gone for each production of the output for each farm. This is the intermediate inputs. This is what I'm using is power, fuel, and water expenses. This is the energy expenses of a farm. This will be using as an IV instrumental variable for this correction of the simultaneity between the capital and the productivity of the farm. And this is capital. I have used capital employed. This is purely capital. So I can label the variable again. By the time you can write. So I'm first deriving the log of them. Total labor wages. So if I do this first, all good? Yes. Write this, then generate these two coefficients. This is beta coefficient for labor, and this is beta coefficient for capital. or Levinshon-Petrin, I confused. That's how I indicated it. Then again, tell the data that this is XT pharma year, this is a panel data set. Then that comes. So this is now so much menu driven. When we had our PhD program, so I took a development after our like the macro usual stuff got over econometrics. So we had to do 1 year of macro one, macro two, econometrics one, macro two, econometrics. So after this over, you have to take 1 year of specialization. So I took trade and development because though I wanted to do trade, but I have a lot of interest in development, and my research questions are development oriented because I look at labor markets, I look at immigration. So I wanted to take up development as well. So in the micro, so there are two courses of in international trade. The first course was like theory. The second semester was applied. In development, it was micro development and there's a macro development. Micro development, we had this professor called, actually he is in Delhi now, Jean-Louis Arco. He's the president of GDN, the Global Development Network. Arco, he's posted in Delhi for the last 3 years. So all the assignments he gave us, Arco, Jean-Louis used to give, like it was mandatory that you had to solve those assignments in R. You cannot use any other software. And I'm talking about 2010 here. 13, 14 years before, and there wasn't any manual that existed of R during that. And now you have a lot of books of R. But if there wasn't. So about like we are in groups to solve those PhD. So we were 3, 4 together, 2 German, 1 Italian, and me. We were 4 together, and there are other 2 groups. We were 12, I guess, in a class in Geneva, and almost like continuously coding, nothing is coming out, nothing. Like after 2.5 days, almost spending 60 hours of little bit of sleep, almost no food, then we cannot crack it at all. After 60 hours of coding and stuff, we realize that the way you code in R is actually how you write your econometrics formula. Is exactly similar how do you code in R. And that was after toiling for 60 hours and during Christmas. And that was the 3rd semester. And end of 3rd semester, like Christmas holidays are completely over. We couldn't get any kind of food and stuff. Then when we realized it, we went each other's hostel. Like, let's go have a bath and come back, then to solve the problem properly. So now so much things are menu driven. You can, which helps. It's actually not loss of productivity. I'm not saying it should not be. It's just a huge set of time. There is a learning curve involved for sure. There's a learning curve, but it's also a time cost. Which one is greater? It's very difficult to tell. Is it someone is trying to enter through this? So there's a time cost and there's a learning curve. Which one, the value of which is higher is very difficult to analyze. And if you go back to 4 generations, they will tell more stories because they had much more difficulties, but there's nothing there then. Like people who did it in the 80s and 70s, you can't even imagine how they did it actually. So the other one, after you write this, I don't think your SCADA has all this. So you have to install this command. This command doesn't exist in SCADA. So you know how to install. SSC install left back. Write this and it will be installed. Or you can go to here. This is one way, or you can go help, SCADA command, and can write left back. You can write left back, you can click OK, and the series comes, and then you can click on this, and then you can install it. Each way is fine. Come again? Yes. Either you so this command doesn't naturally exist in SCADA. You have to install it. So either you write SSC install. So you have to write this. So all the new commands install left. Either you write this or you go to stata command, search it, and then install it. There are two ways. And this is the command.
It's not available in SSC install.
It's not available.
It's not available.
Then if you go there, let me see. Oh, it should be straightforward.
The SSC install is not okay. I think they have modified it.
They have modified it. Could be, maybe possible. Used to, but then go to help.
Yeah.
Help is working.
Yeah.
Help search. Help basically state a command. Then do left pet. Then write left pet and do OK. Because I have installed it, it will not show me. Then it will come. You will see. Then there is a different kinds of commands. It will come. And you will find left pet somewhere there. Did you find it? Should be there if you. No, I mean, help. Got it with the help? That is, you just set a command, then it will come the last one you see. Alright, with the left pet. And help, set a command. How to set a command? Set a command is Indices. Help. This set a command. Right, left, left. Should come this way. Then you write left. No, left. Left. Back. Not left. I can see. It's just internal. That's why. You find yourself. Solution. The radius of the page. So you. Just should I send that? But if you have it, even if I send it, would it help you run? Because don't have the command, it will not run. I can tell you. Yes, sir. Huh? It's but that would not help. Like, not you have to write the state and code for that particular library instead of that. There is a code STA. But you can define the message. Or is okay. Okay. But we need to click on that. Yes, that's the problem. Okay, yes. You know, is that already installed? Yeah, I think it is. It's good. It is still running. That will take. That takes time. That running the command because you have why it is taking time. I can even if it will solve not the problem if I send you because if it doesn't have the command is data, it cannot run the command. That's the problem. I can send you now right now. Yes, ST0060. If you can type this and see if so. What I'm doing is why it will take time. It is replications 50 times. I'm replicating the command 50 times. So is this industry specific? Which one? No. This farm specific. That's why you can see I'm doing it at the farm year level. It will generate productivity estimates for each farm for each year.
So the production function will be at farm.
At the farm. Is it already also time out next time as well? Time to you could do it. Okay. No? For you as well? No? Time out. For you as well. Oh. I downloaded my mobile. Then it's working. Internet is not. Okay. Internet is not working. Hi.
We have different kind of issues and development.
That's true. This is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. So let me then, well, I can send you this, but it will not solve the problem. You will not be able to run still.
Sir, it has not been.
Your system. Some.
We are not like.
How to solve this problem? Let me explain and then let me explain what the command says. So basically, this is the command. You can see you are using, imagine we had the variable, the VA, the last equation was VA on the left hand side. We took the VA on the left hand side. We had in log form, we had the sales or the output, we had the raw materials. We took the raw materials in the other side and the equation was, the last equation was VA. That's what we are exactly. The first part here is you can have CGPA. Then you have the wages, which is free from, why it is written free? Free from the simultaneity problem. That's why it is written free. This is a proxy, which are we using the energy expenses, power, fuel, energy expenses, and this is the capital, which is the indigenous variable. We are substituting this, break the simultaneity problem between the capital and the efficiency or the productivity. We're using this as a proxy.
Why we are not using K? Sorry, number of laborers.
Because we don't have prowess. If you use SI, you use.
Okay. So wage is sufficient.
Wage is a proxy for the employee because that's an intensive margin. It's better to always use employee. But prowess doesn't give you employee.
So what will you do?
Calculate labor units, no?
How will calculate labor units from prowess? Prowess only gives you the total compensation,
Not from
total wage.
From using ASI.
Yes, but at the farm level you can't.
By assuming that industry has the same wage.
Oh, this is too much approximation. We've already seen there's so much, farms are so very different. How then you can approximate the wages of wages? This would be too much approximation. You'll not get true estimates of the productivity.
So this the coefficients, these are the average of all farms.
No. Once you generate, you will see it differs by farm by farm.
The output that came. coefficient.
Oh, the coefficient, yes, absolutely.
So again, that means that is assuming a constant or same production function for all.
No,
Otherwise, we would have
No.
different elements.
no, you will not. So the betas are different.
Yes, sir.
Betas are different. Betas are different for all forms and all. When you estimate the betas, the coefficient gives you an average coefficient across all forms. But when it generates the coefficient, then it is a separate one. Then it's all specific to forms. So if I run this, let me run. So see, it takes some bit of time because I'm replicating. You can do it 100 times, you can do it 150 times, however you want to replicate it. It's just the iteration process. I have done 100 to 150. Oh, sorry, I didn't.
What is the ideal replication?
100. Just for the sake of time, I'm doing 50.
Just 100.
100, I've seen people have used 100 applications.
But at default it is 50.
At default, it is 50, so I'm using 50. That's it. So now I have generated TFP. After generating TFP, what I am doing is now see. I am using regression now to estimate the tariffs on productivity. That whether trade liberalization in India had any effect on productivity of farms or not. Very simple question. What I'm doing is I'm using TFP, I'm using lag of output tariffs to have simultaneity problem. I am controlling for the size of the farm, which is the GVA, and I'm controlling for age. Simultaneously, I'm controlling for farm fixed effects, which is basically A is called absorb farm fixed effects, which control for the farm heterogeneity, and I'm controlling for industry year fixed effects. This is the very conservative estimates at the 3-digit level because my tariffs vary at the 4-digit level. That's why I'm doing it at the 3-digit level, a little more aggregate level. You can do it at the 2-digit level as well. So if I run this, you can see there is not much of effect that I can find. There is a negative effect, but there is not much of effect that we can find on. Yes.
Why have always used log in every variable?
Log in every variable to measure changes in percentage. You can easily measure. And log kind of normalizes stuff.
Sir, why you have other data variables?
It's just to you can use it as a lag as well. It's better to use it as a lag. It's just to control for the size of the farm. You can use it without. I can use it without and see what happens. That's the point. When we do regressions, before you see one table that we do, there are multiple number of regressions we run and see how things change, and then we kind of concentrate on 3-4 columns. Concentrate on 3-4 columns, we have run 13-14 regressions just for one table, changing this, changing that, taking logs, taking not logs, lags, not lags. So let's see, since Pius has said without this something changed, nothing changes. No effect actually on this.
Why the last price vote for TFP?
Large? Because good, not good. So big farms have big TFP. That's why you're controlling for the farm size. And then if I do it at the 4-digit industry, controlling for industry or trends, is there? Yes, when I'm controlling for industry or trends, you can see we find some effect of so a 10% drop in tariffs increased about 0.3% of productivity of Indian farms. So that's what actually Khandelwal-Topalova also found in that paper, that when you're controlling for industry trends, industrial trends at the 4-digit level, we found effects of the output tariff on productivity. That foreign competition increase efficiency of Indian firms. They become more efficient with foreign competition. Because they survive of it. And now, I guess you remember, we went through these 6 different mechanisms to understand what happened. What is the mechanism? Why did it? So there are many papers on this as well, to check why output tariffs or trade liberalization per se had an effect on TFT of the firms. What is the mechanism in which, and they found many mechanisms. One was import of intermediate, because the tariffs dropped, Indian firms started importing intermediate goods. Because they started importing intermediate goods, the production function got more efficient. That's why they're imposed, because 82% of those imported intermediate goods came from the 10 OECD countries, which are R&D in nature, which are high quality in nature, where they used R&D intensive high quality inputs in the production function. Obviously, output would go more given one set of input. So that's why. So this is one of the reasons. There are many reasons. Product variety also changed, because Indian firms started producing more product. Product mix within farm, product mix adjustment also changed. So there are other reasons. Yes.
So if we use top class products of means you will say that there is hypothesis on all these things or politics or products.
The Olipex you can use. The problem is to define the exit variable. We have investments data here, but the problem is to define the exit variable. Because when you do not observe a farm in the prowess, the problem is we don't know that farm is actually dropped from the prowess or has actually exited the market. It has exited the sample of farms which are reported in prowess or exited the market altogether. That's why we don't use the exit. You can use, so you can assume that since they have dropped out of the prowess, they have exited the market and can create an indicator. I have done in robustness checks that way, because the referees wanted to control in some other paper, wanted us to control for the exit probabilities to check whether the results hold. Then we say to the referee, this is what we're assuming, but this is a robustness check because this is the problem with the process. But these results generally come in the appendix, not in the main table. That's the problem, because you really don't know what is happening. You're saying something.
So like for the Olympics, so all these productivity measures we can see. What are the differences?
Oh, yes, there are differences. There are, I guess I have not put the table, but you have upward coefficients if you are using OLS and fixed effects methods. I have done this somewhere. Let me finish. Let me show the other one, and then let me come back to this. I've done this somewhere. Thank you for the. Let me check then the size of the farms. Does it actually differ by the size of the farms? So you can check more or less it doesn't. So the small farms actually have benefited in the corporate sector. In the registered industrial sector, the big farms, rather than the big farms, the small farms are actually benefited. This is what the small farms you mean. This is not actually the small farms. Whatever is in the prowess are the big farms. It's not the general definition of small farms. I am saying small farms, but these are really not small farms. What we know now that farms in prowess has at least more than 100 employees, which is basically sort of big farms, more or less. So you can see, because the big farms, the superstar big farms, are already operating at the highest efficiency level, more or less. That's what happens. The farms who are on the fringe, they kind of always get pushed forward more. So that's what happened was, when you divide it by farm size, that's what we see, that the biggest of the firms did not have a bit of increase, but that's not significant. The most effect lies with the small and medium set of firms, which kind of got a push with the foreign competition, got more efficient, how to organize their production function, how to operate in the market, because competition made them learn. We all learn in competition as well. This is pretty much a phenomenon as well. Even if you see what we do, the other one is the Ackerberg. Ackerberg is pretty much the same. Again, the command here is Ackfest. You can download this called Ackfest and you can see. Ackfest is the command for Ackerberg, which is the newest of the world. And it's very much the same. You can see even the commands are pretty much like the left back commands, Levinshon-Petrin. You have free, which is the labor, then you have proxy, which is the energy expenses, then you have the state variable, which is simultaneity problem with the productivity. So the commands are also pretty much the same. Here in the Ackerberg, you have in the command, you have to say Ackerberg that the data varies by farm and year. I am doing here the application of 100 and using robust standard errors and no dummies. There is a separate command I didn't understand much why they call it no dummy, and I'm using the value added approach. There are different approaches of Ackerberg. It's pretty much what Levinshon-Petrin did. In fact, Mallets is the student of this Levinson actually. Levinshon-Petrin's Levinson. So Mallets, the model we see, is actually, so Levinson was Mallet's supervisor during PhD in Michigan. Then this is productivity. You are estimating the productivity. Then if we, so it will take time. Did you guys able to load this one at first?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This one you what? Both work now. Good. So we have everything ready. Now we can see this actually, can we replicate or not? See, the results are pretty much the same. It's a bit high in terms of the coefficients, but the direction of the coefficients is pretty much same. So drop in output tariffs leads to an increase in productivity of the firm. So even if you change productivity estimates, the results doesn't change. It's just the coefficients. The coefficients doesn't change. Coefficients changes, the magnitude changes, but the significance doesn't. It's pretty much significant effect of trade liberalization on the productivity of Indian firms. Yes.
So if there is competition in the market, product market, so output tariff has decreased. So there is competition on the domestic market. So it might increase the productivity.
That's what this says.
So like how will test this hypothesis? Right?
This is the hypothesis. The point is
Competition challenge. How will we
the point is to explain what is the mechanism there through which productivity got increased. What is being affected by the output tariffs that changed productivity? Because productivity is dependent on many factors. That is the point of what. So that's what we were discussing in the morning. There are 6 different channels that could be, and people have shown a lot of different channels work. The 2 different channels which worked in Indian case, one was input of intermediate products. That significantly went up. Intermediate inputs from foreign countries, developed countries, went up significantly, which helped efficient production function. Second channel was the farms started producing more product variety. So there is a change in product variety. The farms started producing new product variety. That means the farms started to innovate. When few farms started to innovate, that means innovation has a direct effect on productivity. So these are there. I don't know. There is no paper on intersector or intra-sector reallocation of resources as a result of trade liberalization in India. I have not come up.
Using the sector specific concentration index.
No one has used it. Like writing a proper macro model, no one has. As far as my knowledge goes, no one has used or checked whether there has been any changes in reallocation of resources with respect to trade liberalization. As far as the now, I may be wrong. Self-selection or self-selection, I don't think anyone has checked self-selection. Learning by doing, in Indian case, I'm not very sure. Technology upgrading, yes. So there are three explanations that was given. Technology upgrading there is evidence of technology upgrading. So Maria Bus has a paper which says that input trade liberalization actually helped Indian farms to upgrade their technology. So that can help increase productivity within farm product adjustments can help productivity, and import of intermediate goods can help that. So these are the mechanisms that can actually happen when tariffs went down and productivity increased behind this. Okay. So you can write a paper actually on the between and intra-sector allocation of resources and build a model and to see actually calculate the wages and see how with production or how with tariffs that has changed or not. I don't know. That has concentrated. Right? Is it actually within farm intra-industry allocation of resources went up, or inter-industry allocation of resources went up? But then you have to really know the probability, you have to know the exits or the entries, which farm come in, the churning you have to know. You have to estimate with this. So this is what. Please, voice. Yeah.
In between the so that I can.
Yes. Sorry. So there, yes.
Log age, we use log age, this is a significant variable in the result. And after that, the each log
Age square.
What is log age square in this?
What means? Okay. So generally what we do is we don't look at control variables. Sir, if you ask me honestly, our point be generally that we focus on one variable and we control for several other variables. What happens to several other variables? We don't know. Because the point is controlling for this if my variable of interest is happening wrong. But next comes to the economic intuition question. What happens what happens with age? So that this basically means, and this doesn't have means, this means older farms have what done. We do not find any evidence of productivity for the newer farms, but older farms, if you go old and old, there is a nonlinear, that means there is a quadratic nonlinear relationship between old and new farms. The old farms actually are less productive than the new farms. That's what it is saying. If you want to really interpret, and that's actually true. The more old farms, the productivity actually goes down. They become complicit, and the productivity goes down because they don't do organizational changes, they don't do intra-production changes or whatever. Their productivity starts going down after some point in time, which could be, and standard literature says 25 years ago. You have need significant organizational changes. That's why sometimes shake-up happens. They would change the CEOs, you will see they change the upper management, because to shake up the organization to increase the productivity, because the productivity becomes scalable after some point in time. You don't know what are the new things. That's why they need new people to come in to think about new ways to organize production.
But sir, few of the literature they said older farms performs well than newer farms.
But it would depend on the type of industry, I would guess, or more or less the type of country. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So there is one theoretical. What I'm all saying is anecdotal evidence. There is actually theory which proves that older farms would do this on new farms. So all these are based on empirical evidences, more or less.
And rate to nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. This can be true as well.
Is more, that means there.
Productivity is increasing. Yeah, this can be true as well. I'm not absolutely arguing against this. The in Indian case, you can see this is Indian case that the older the farms is, and we have anecdotal evidences on this in India that older farms are not high productive farms. That's why they shake up things a lot. And if we do the size story in this case, does it? It's pretty much the same. Even if we do the size story, here you can see the middle farms have larger effects than the bigger farms. It's pretty much the same story. Even if I use, so when we do actually kind of estimate, or when we would try and prove something in terms of hypothesis, we always need to show things with different indices, different kinds of estimates, how robust. So now the effect is robust. So you have, because you have used different kinds of estimates to estimate, and if that is consistent across indices, then you know the effect is consistent. Okay. So this is more or less. So let me check just before I go to, if I can show you actually. Where was it? No. Where was it? If I have, I don't know if I have the. I think I estimated for this one. Where is this? How do you get the supplementary materials here? Yes, I can remember. So you can see the capital. This is production comparing only for leather and textile firms, because this paper has leather and textile firms. So with fixed effects and OLS, it underestimates the value of the capital and overestimates the value of the labor. And when you have LT, you have actually the other phenomenon. The capital is more rather than the labor. So it corrects for the simultaneity of the problem. So it
it comes to scale. So this showing increasing returns to scale.
This showing increasing returns to scale. This is what the heterogeneous farm theory says. So this is what I take for leather and textile farms. You can show it for others as well. So this is one of the papers from my PhD thesis, is the environmental standards, trade and innovation evidence. It should be quasi-natural experiment. I don't know why they kind of published with. So there was what I did was, there was a technical regulation imposed by Germany in 1994 on Indian textile industries, so that you cannot use certain level of inputs. What was the critical input for the chemical industry? So we checked. So I checked for the Indian leather industries. What happened? Because leather industry was the primary user of that input, and Germany banned that input. Germany and the EU banned that input because it came out from a lab experiment that it was input was carcinogenic to the skin. Use it for dyeing, it could be might be carcinogenic. So ban that input. So we use this the regulation that came out from Germany to understand whether trade adaptation effects So we checked probabilities, exit probabilities, and stuff. So regulation, what we found was regulation significantly increased the export revenues of a firm through use of new technology and high quality imported raw materials. So when the ban got banned, they started importing high quality import materials. Exports actually started increasing. So it giving a possible signaling effect because exports started increasing, and that means I'm actually using high quality raw materials. And again, like most of the cases, the gain was concentrated on the upper tail of the distribution. So the third and the fourth quartile of farms can only benefited because they were the big farms and they could right there and then they could import once it was banned. And when they import high quality materials, because not everyone can import, because you have to have the knowledge from where to import, where to get this one. So they kind of benefited. And this imported raw materials significantly express low exit probabilities of firms. So not all firms exited from the market, we find, because they could simultaneously import this raw materials from outside. And there was a sorting effect, the small firms went out of the market. So in this case, what we are discussing before, there was a reallocation of resources from the small to the big firms. So the small firms are also selling, right? Because of that regulation, they ceased to operate because they cannot use it. Because what happened was after the German regulation, the MOEF, the Ministry of Environment and Forest in India, came up with a ban that even when are you selling domestically, you cannot use it. You cannot use it at all, that product. So even the small farms could have not exported, the smaller exporters who do not have exported, started selling in the domestic market, they couldn't do it. They exited from the market because they had to stop the production of whatever production they were doing using that input. So there was reallocation of resources from the same leather and textile industry from the small firms to the big firms. The big firms now, what I mean by small allocation of resources, the big firms captured the market which is left open by the small firms. So the big firms absolutely go big because of a regulation, random regulation that came out from Germany from a lab experiment because of some consumer advocacy group filed a case in the German Supreme Court. Because of that, certain firms here completely got closed down. So you can imagine how trade, this is a non-tariff barrier. That if you have to export, you have to buy these regulations. We call it in trade literature, this is a non-tariff barrier. Because what German did was, how do you know they are doing it? They installed facilities when India was exporting, even they installed facilities in India as well. Because Germany was at that point in time was buying 74% of their consumer items from India. So they installed testing facilities even in India to test whether these shirts, pants, and everything, the textile and the leather items, having that input or not, that chemical called azotite, they're having that, using that input or not, even in Germany. So before entering German market, they were testing sample materials, and many of the sample materials were rejected before first because they had to change the input, right? They have to have high quality inputs. And so their sorting effect happened in Indian market because of some regulation that happened in a foreign market. So how this is trade. When how trade kind of brings a shock from their to a domestic market and sort things out. So overall, the industry become efficient because they started using. So think of a holistic general equilibrium. The industry got efficient because they started producing high quality products. If the other one is that they did innovation, new product varieties came in because of this, because of the regulation. There was reallocation of resources. The best of the farms are producing now, but there is a negative loss, which is the small firms that do the market. So there's an employment loss, there's other set of loss. So what general equilibrium picture would be like this: the gains, the losses. Now you don't know. So you have to write a model to know what the general equilibrium effects are, but I don't know. I have not done this, but that's an interesting actually case. We have used this experiment for one more paper as well, and we show that because of that change in Germany, chemical farms have also gained because the chemical farms in India were supplying this is the downstream, right? The farms which were selling that input were the chemical farms, which are the upstream farms. So we looked at what happened to the chemical farms, because the chemical farms were actually got hit. Because if I am producing for the chemical farms, that was an output. For textile farms, that was an input. Textile, this is chemical, this is textile. I am producing something and using a produce a final product, but that input is my final product, and you're banning my input completely. So what happened to the chemical industry? The chemical industry also got changed. They kind of innovated a new product, and in terms of innovation, so we saw that product churning happened. A lot of products they dropped, because we have India, we have this product level data. So we show that a lot of products dropped, new products were introduced in the market, and that for reason the managers of the chemical industry got more money. The managerial compensation of the chemical industries were benefited because they conceptualized this. Which one to use, which product to use. The R&D, maybe the R&D scientists, the managers are also R&D scientists. So they kind of benefited because of this. Saying the manager, let's go to the manager paper. So you have the before. So what we'll do is we'll check the effect of trade on Stokes-Samuelson, this Stokes-Samuelson theorem, and see whether the skilled labor gained more than the unskilled laborers in India or not because of the trade liberalization. But before doing so, before estimating this, one problem is when you're using one problem that you will all face. Sorry, let me. What we face for to utilize any kind of policy, what the first problem we face is the endogeneity of the policy. When we actually estimating the effect on the managers, the problem is endogeneity of the policy. Why it is endogenous? Could be endogenous? Anyone? Because the tariffs which were dropped, this was dropped, right? Because of the trade liberalization program. This could be influenced by managerial lobbying. The industries which have powerful managers can actually lobby for the tariffs to drop so that they can gain. People lobby for tariffs to drop. If you know, it's called lobbying. The entire lobbying literature. If you are interested in the lobbying literature, look up a lot of papers in the US literature. You will find good trade and lobbying and huge sort of literature, because people lobby in the US to tariffs, for tariffs and everything. Industrial groups are strong, very strong, to lobby for the So this is one of the major problems, that managers can lobby for tariffs. And this can go down, and that can affect managerial compensation. So managerial lobbying in T-1 period may be affecting tariffs at T period, and managerial compensation at T+1 period is going on. It's highly possible. And this makes the entire thing endogenous. We cannot have this now tariffs actually affecting managerial compensation. The skilled workers are lobbying for these tariffs to fall down so that they can get. It might happen. To show this kind of what we do, what I have done is here, what we did also in the paper, we took managerial share of compensation at T-1 period and regressed it on the T period. At whether T-1 period managerial compensation actually influenced T period tariffs or not. And during the first few years of the tariff, when the tariffs are completely dropped, in the first initial years of tariff or not, you can reduce it further as you like. Just controlling for forming your fixed effects, I control, and you can see you can do it in many different ways. Nothing happens. There's no effect. There's no effect on this. You can check at the industry level. This is at the firm level. We have certain industry level variables here as well. At the 3-digit level, if I am not wrong. Yes, this is factories, employees, workers, and non-production workers. This is also, these are all ASI variables at the industry level. So you can also check with this. Let me check with nothing happens. So let me check whether why I'm using factories, because the factories give an indication of the amount of output. The higher number of factories, the higher amount of output. So the bargaining power of those industries is higher. This is, I'm pretty much sure this is at the industry level. So this should be industry fixed effects. NIC 2004. D. Find some negative effect of this, but there is no positive effect. From production workers. So managerial lobby does not play a role, actually. So the table 1, what we did before we go to the causal effect, what we did in the paper was we had conditional correlation. We established the conditional correlation first. What do I mean by conditional correlation? We check with the inputs first. And what happens with different kinds of inputs? Because this is one advantage of prowess, that you can actually check with different kinds of inputs. So first we checked with first we checked with the total inputs, whether inputs, because we'll be using the input tariffs, what kind of inputs are actually affecting. Because you remember the graph, if you don't remember the graph, this is the graph. So this is the graph. This was the motivation factor. So importers have higher than non-importers, but we don't know which type of importers are paying their managers more. You need to check first, and that's one advantage of prowess, that it divides these importers into 4 different categories: imports of raw materials, imports of capital goods, imports of stores and spares, imports of finished goods. So you can divide this and actually check which type of importers are actually giving their managers more money. So let me start with the total imports first. You can say total imports effect. So we find actually total imports has a strong, significant positive effect on this. This should be positive because imports going up, managerial share of competition, but this is not tariffs. Then I'm dividing. Does it same happen for the exports? It's good to check with the exports also, because a lot of importers are exporters as well. So you can see exports also has an effect. The exporters also give their managers more money. But the next question should come to your mind, whether if I control them simultaneously, which effect dominates? If I control importers versus exporters simultaneously, whether both of them, whether my hypothesis stands or not. You can see the hypothesis actually stands. When I'm controlling for importers, with exporters, the effect of exporters completely go away. It's the importers dominate the exporters effect. That gives me an idea. This actually concentrated. Even when I'm controlling for other set of trading firms, the importers effect stands still and stands strong. So that's why we know now the importers are giving their managers more money. This is how do you check basically when you're proving the hypothesis that you have to control for other stuff and check still your hypothesis is strong enough or not. Then what I'm dividing the inputs into production unit and non-production. We did several classifications. Production unit, capital goods and raw materials. This is non-production, stores and spares and finished goods. So where from it is coming? So I'm breaking down very step by step the inputs. Production units has a significant effect. Whether the similar comes for the non-production unit, because total inputs have everything. No, there is no significance for the non-production unit. If I control for both, you can see there is no effect for non-production units, but there is effect for production units. So either that means production unit was capital and raw materials. So either it is capital, goods, or raw materials which is driving the effect. So I would what we are getting at, we are trying to discard the other effects which are not, that is no matter. We're trying to focus on the effect which would matter eventually, that and then carry out the hypothesis later. So this is a method of exclusion. We're starting with everything. Exports, imports, exporters matter? No. Importers only matter. Within importers, there are 4 kinds: production goods, non-production goods. Production goods matter? Yes, than the non-production goods. Now what we'll do is, we'll break down the production goods into import of raw materials and capital goods. Import of raw materials does matter. Yes, significant effect. Import of capital good, you can see. So let me matters much more. So the firm, so you can see the coefficient. This is 0.0.4 for importer of raw materials, and this is 0.16. This is four times higher, 400 times higher. So the firms which import capital goods, their managers, as a result of the trade liberalization, were paid more than the firms which import raw materials. So the entire effect, that means, is driven by input tariffs of capital goods, more or less. That gives the hypothesis to you that I should not be concentrating on anything. I should be concentrating on input tariffs of capital goods, because this is where the effect lies, more or less, because this is driving our what effect we are seeing as the total imports. This is being driven significantly by import of capital goods. So this is again conditional correlation, because managerial compensation can also drive capital goods. I have more managers, and then they know better capital goods from import to her, I can import more capital goods. So this is still conditional correlation. This doesn't establish the causality of the results. That it says that imports drive managerial compensation, but on the other hand, it also be true that managerial compensation can also drive imports of capital goods. To break from this conditional correlation, what we do is, I'm not showing you, then we are using the input and the output tariffs. Input tariffs especially, because we know this is driven by input tariffs, not output tariffs. Completely, right? So we can use this input tariffs and can see there is an effect of the input tariffs, negative effect. Output tariffs doesn't affect, still output tariff doesn't affect. Now we concentrate on the input tariffs. So there is about, this is what we exactly find, that input tariffs has significant positive effect on the share of managerial compensation of the firm. The 10% drop in input tariffs lead to about 0.1% growth in share of managerial compensation in the total compensation of the firms. And this is on average across all firms. So this is what we actually found. Then we did it for the input tariffs. This is at a 2-digit level. We control for the industry year trend. This is true. Then what we checked was, we also checked whether managerial compensation as a total GP of the firm increased or not. Whether given the output of that firm, the managerial compensation is the share of the compensation also increased. But if you look at the overall picture of the firm, it still increased or not. It still increased. Given the managerial compensation is still increased by 1.6. So 1.6, 0.16%, with 10% drop in input tariffs. Then we checked whether this increase is driven by importers or non-importers. What kind? This is actually, because we saw this is driven by importers. So we classify importers and we interact importers with the input tariffs to check whether this interaction effect between the importers and the input tariffs has an additional effect or not. There should be an additional effect given our previous hypothesis. And you can see there is one. So there is an additional effect. There's a base effect, but there's an additional effect and which is significant if you are an importer or not. The importer itself has a significant effect. So when you establish the result, the point being what we do is we kind of start controlling for a lot of things. The first thing it will have is skill intensity. Maybe while controlling for skill intensity, maybe certain industries are more skilled than others. That's why managerial compensation went up. Even if I'm controlling for the skill intensity of those industries, does the managerial compensation still hold or not? The effect of trade on managerial compensation still hold or not? This comes from the SI. This is not Prowess data. This is 4-digit level SI. They give non-production workers because this is controlling at the 4-digit level. By employees, that's the skill intensity standard definition. Non-production workers divided by the total employees of an industry. So I've calculated log of skill intensity and I'm controlling for log of skill intensity. And show whether when I'm controlling for skill intensity, we still have at the 10% level, we still have significant effect on the input tariffs. If capital, because a lot of firms are capital intensive, when you control for capital also, the effect still holds more. It jumps up. So it's just that the other one was interesting, there's this World Management Survey. So they calculate the amount of management technology. So they survey firms across each 2-digit industries you can see. In India, they are across 2-digit industries, and they survey firms in terms of how managerial practices are in this, and they give a score. So some industries have more managerial technologies than other industries. So use this industry level managerial technologies to control whether, given the controlling for managerial technology, my effect still holds or not. So this is basically how do we the effect. We didn't find much effect. I don't think that was the case, actually. I don't know why it is not coming here, but this is not the case. And if I do size of the farms, you already have the size of the farms. This was surprising. In the last to last, I didn't control for industry 10, something like this. So you are saying, huh? Tech intensity is Oh,
quality.
the management technology, I have not put it because I'm controlling for industry. Okay. Because it will be dropped out. Sorry. I can, because it's at the 2-digit level. Yes, that's right.
I have a different question.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So from where you get this data?
Which one?
This is the 2-digit level, right?
Yes.
What is the source?
This is the World Management Survey, WMS. So they do it for a lot of other countries. If you can go to the website, they have industry level management
But
technology.
this is same across years.
So they have done it to be used in time invariant measure, but they do not do it in panel. There is one for 2000. This is for 2001 or 2. There is one, I guess, 2010 or 11. So something 8-9 years after.
But we are taking a constant number.
A constant number. It's just to show because there is very difficult to find out this.
Year effect will nullify this.
The year effects will nullify this, but even the referees wanted to. When the referees want, you have to do it. There is no other way. Sorry, this is. Yes, sorry, my industrial trends I forgot to control for. Then you have to. Size of the farms. It is already fine, sorry. Yes, so more or less the effect is true across more or less every set of farms. Exporter, what we did next was we divided between exporter, non-exporter. We divided between end use, final goods versus, this is interesting, the final goods versus, so by the HO table, we defined each industry or each farm where they belong. Either they belong to final goods industry or they belong to intermediate goods industry. So final goods are basically, one was consumer durables and this is consumer non-durables. And the intermediate goods were intermediate, capital and basic goods. So those were the goods. Intermediate goods. But there is a book called Protection in Indian Manufacturing by Norros 2001, and he has classified from the IO table according to the industrial classifications about which is intermediate, which is non-consumer durables, which is capital goods. And you can see what happens here. It is not final goods, or I am doing something wrong. It is intermediate goods. It is driven by intermediate goods and not final goods. The other interesting part was, because this is prowess. Prowess actually gives you divides compensation into wage. I don't know if they still do it or not. You have salaries versus bonuses. They still do it. So compensation, if you know, the total compensation is your wages plus bonuses. So actually, we can divide this and see the wages increased or the bonuses increased. Which part of your compensation actually increased or not? So what we did was, and there are competing theories. Let me check what's, so wages increased a bit. Wages, I guess, increased more than the bonuses. We don't find anything in the wages. I don't know why it got changed significantly. Something changed somewhere. This is we controlling for, I guess. No. So wages, what we find was wages increased more than bonuses. Wages increased about 1%, and bonuses increased less than wages. And there are competing theories on this. If a firm thinks about that the effect is going to sustain in the long run, they increase the wages more than the bonuses. The short run or changes are more concentrated in the bonuses rather than the long run changes. So we kind of find similar effects in the bonuses rather than in the wages rather than the bonuses. And the last one, we checked for non-managerial compensation, whether there is an effect on non-managerial compensation, on whether there is a substitution that happens. So this is non-managerial compensation divided by G. We cannot use share, because if you are using, both share goes to one. If you're sharing using one share, this go down, the one share would be automatically going down. So what we use the absolute value, not the share. You can see there is no effect on the non-managerial effect. So non-managerial actually kind of stagnated. They never went up with the trade liberalization during. That's what it is also showing. They did not affect because of the input tariffs. The managers in share increase. That's why the share of the managers' absolute compensation increased. That's why the share of the managerial compensation increased in the total compensation, whereas the non-managerial compensation kind of was stagnant over time. Because so that means overall the managers gained more than the non-managers during the trade liberalization process. This is more or less, I wanted to show you two things. Let me quickly send this, all of this to you. And there are many other papers. So we also I don't know now, we also actually calculated executive managers. I don't know if still given or not. So they give you the names of the executive directors of the firm. They still give it. I don't know right now in prowess. So we calculated actually whether the executive managers who have executive powers in the firm, that also increased or not. And that also significantly increased. You can see by the non-importers and the importers, the number of executive managers have also increased significantly. So you have used this executive managers figure as well. By them, but they used to give by names, not numbers. Executive managers of a firm. So calculated by the names, the numbers. And that also increased significantly. The other one, I'm not showing you here, but the other one we found was interesting, is this family farms effect. So we found that even the family farms also had an effect, but even the professionally managed farms, the family farms had significant effects. So the family farms with the trade liberalization process were transferring themselves more into professionally managed farms. So they're changing their way of operations. And what we find more was short run versus long run effects. You also check for short run versus long run effects. And we find the effects are pretty much short. So when we regress T minus 1, T minus 2, T minus 3, the effect was concentrated completely on the T minus 1. So it was very much short run and long run effects. Anything else that we we controlled for a lot of things, additional controls in terms of export tariffs, everything. A lot of robustness checks. Yeah, that's about it, more or less, with the paper. But let me quickly send it to Shoma. Shoma, the ITR ID, right? So that sheet can be shared. This is Day-3. You must have got it. Good. So you have now a lot of data. You've got Shoma? To check a lot of things. There is a lot of data that I have shared. All in the browser. You can check a lot of stuff. Following the do findings, formulating new hypotheses and stuff. You can check a lot of stuff using this data set. There's a lot of information on these data sets that I have accumulated over the years. But these are obviously publicly shareable. So in a sense that so one thing keep in mind with the data sets is when you're publishing it, you do not publish the data set. Working on it is absolutely fine because it comes with an agreement that because the firm names are that you cannot publish that. So in each of the paper that you will see in my papers, when I use prowess, so when before submitting the paper, we write to the editor that because this has been obviously first one, you have to subscribe the prowess. That a lot of money goes in, about £2,500 each year goes in to subscribe the data. So there's a lot of money. So there's a proprietary, and also there are names of the firms. And there could be other implications. So we do not publish the data set. What we say to the editor is, if anyone is interested in the results, we are happy to then, someone is interested can write to us and then we can share. But we cannot publicly upload the data set because it has names of the firms. That's the disadvantage of prowess. Because it has the names of the firms, you cannot publish the data set. Because ASI is anonymized. But still people don't publish. Because there is, so what we all write is, the farm level data sets are generally not published. Generally not published. You will not find like which world level data sets which are done by the World Bank, which are publicly available is stuff. But in journal farm level, because these are disaggregated important information which people have accumulated over their life, there is a lot of hard and toil has gone through to build these data sets together. Right? So you whoever is interested in terms of research is absolutely happy to share. That's no point. So I've shared with you guys. If you can use this and come up with new papers, that's absolutely good. That will be very good to see if you can do something with this data sets. I hope you do something with these data sets. And then cite us if something is related. We'll be happy. We are happy with small things. An academician, we are happy with very small stuff. And that my work has some set of meanings, and that's about it.